Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode on the High Level Experience podcast. Today, we have a guest who is a true master in the art of sales automation and follow up strategies. This individual has revolutionized the way businesses handle lead management and CRM processes, helping companies across the globe not just meet, but surpass their revenue goals. With over 4 decades of experience, he has created proprietary systems that have been implemented by more than 20,000 businesses in over 150 countries. His innovative techniques, like correct cadence and Sales CPR, are designed to re-engage long forgotten leads, dramatically reduce sales cycles, and propel closure rates to new heights. Whether you're struggling with lead follow-up or, looking to optimize your sales process, he has the solutions that can take your business to the next level. But that's not all. He's also a renowned speaker, trainer, and leading authority in sales and marketing automation, known for his ability to help businesses unlock their full potential. So please welcome to the show, the king of follow-up himself, Steve Rosenbaum, the founder of Flawless Follow-Up.
Wow, Vit, can I send a copy of that to my mother? That sounded really good.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can.
I appreciate that.
Steve.
How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, man. I'm very good. I literally, just before we jumped on, I was just looking at my email just quickly. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those that, I love my inbox to check for new things, if it says something interesting. And I got a nice email from Stripe. New sale, $4,500. I'm like, woo! So I got to fulfill on that right away after this. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm pumped. That's how I am.
Way to go, buddy. Way to go.
That's how I am. But
isn't it nice to have those? Isn't it nice to get those systems in place and that just happens?
It's freaking awesome. It is beautiful.
There you go.
That's the true power of automation.
We can just end this discussion right now, right? And just go do what Vit does.
Absolutely. Steve, welcome to the show, mate. What's been happening in your world?
Oh, man. Thank goodness for, High Level and all the attention that they're bringing to agencies about the potential and the needs and the ability to fulfill for these businesses, things that I've been talking about for a long time, leveling the playing field for these small businesses that need to have these systems in place. And so because of it, well, they're keeping me busy. People are sending you $4,500. I mean, it just goes to show the need, the desire, the unfulfilled potential for this. And that's why I'm so glad for what we're all doing out there to help those small businesses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just went for lunch today and I spoke to a mate of mine who just opened a small little, like a bistro, like a takeaway restaurant. Oh, I mean, I think he does mostly deliveries, but also has a couple of seats. Anyway, he just opened 2 weeks ago. He's, like Asian cuisine. He's really into he loves cooking. And anyway, so we've got a meeting on Friday, and I said to him, I really want to help. I know you're really tight on the budget, but if there's a way I can help, within my capacity, I want to. And I started talking about what I want him to prepare. Hey, so on Friday when you come along, we're gonna have 2 hours together. Let's maximize this time. Let's just make the most of this time. Because I am a busy guy. And so, have at least the bare minimum, have your logos ready, have, some copy about your business, some brief copy, a domain, you have a good domain. And he's like, so yeah, I don't have a domain. I've got this logo. It's just like an image. I don't really have files. I don't have any, verbiage about my business. And then we started talking about it. And I'm like, right, this is so common. I don't know about you, Steve, but have you noticed with really small businesses, it's so common that they don't have these assets when they're starting. It's almost like they don't think about marketing as, well, it's almost like a second thought. Like when they actually need to grow with the business, that's when they start to realize these things. And I said to him, mate, this is actually, that should be part of your plan, part of your marketing, have a budget for marketing. I said to him, look, I'm going to give you a deal, you're a mate of mine. I'll probably give you set up a plan for you for free for a couple of the essential features. But there's going to be things I'm going to recommend to you. You're going to have at least bare minimum, professional looking emails. You're not looking like an amateur sending from at Gmail. And that means Google Workspace and things like that. So prepare for that there will be some expenses. He's looking at me like that. I'm like, mate, this is business. And these are small things, right? It's crazy.
Well, yeah, okay, so you're giving me an example of a small business. You'll be shocked. I mean, this goes on at all scales of businesses at all sizes. You probably know John Logar, right?
Yes.
Okay, so John and I were having lunch one day. He was in Austin, Texas. He and his wife and my wife Sherry and I, we all went down for lunch, and he was telling me a story that he went and walked a trade show, and he was standing in the booth of a large company, and he was meeting with the VP of marketing, and they said that they had $1 million budget on trade shows, $1 million budget on trade shows, and John said, so tell me about your plan for how you're going to follow up with all the people you meet at this trade show. And the guy, his answer was, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What what do you mean? What are we going to do? We're here to make an impression. That's it. They just want to make an impression in the here and now, but no plan for follow up." So I understand your story with the small, but this is the real world of businesses at all levels, which again just shows the need for folks doing what we're doing and your entire audience. I mean, you and I are serving an audience of digital agencies, and they need us. And the great thing is we can save a lot of them, but there's a ton of potential everywhere you look at businesses large and small for sure.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, to follow up on my conversation from lunch, one of the really interesting things was when we started to talk about automation. Obviously, he did. It's one of those, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I started talking to him like, well, look, probably the best way to map out how I can like best help you would be if you could write down a list of activities like in your operations, anything you can think of, what you do, write it down, like bullet points of all the different activities that you do. Aside from like actually cooking the stuff, that's probably one thing I can't automate until I can plug real robots. I think that'll be the next thing for agencies, plugging robots into businesses. That would be cool. But and he's like, he couldn't like. So I mean, I thought like like you can help me with my website. I'm like, I can help you with so much more. Like, I would already assume, let me think about this. Yeah, so I would already assume. So you take pre-orders day before, and then you cook based on how many people ordered the lunch, right? So I would assume that based on those orders, you then have to go home and you have to calculate all the ingredients you're gonna have to have. You're gonna have to go shopping the night before to cook to all those volumes. Like how much time would you spend on that? It's like, yeah, yeah, I just, do it on a piece of paper. Like, mate, like we can automate that. Like you can write down how many recipes you're doing. Like I'm doing like 50. My plan is to rotate 50 recipes. And I said, well, if you could figure out list of ingredients per recipe, per portion, give it to ChatGPT, and every time people fill up the pre-orders the day before, and you get the total count, how many portions they are, and then maybe you have a buffer, 10% margin, an extra couple of portions, right? Just in case, like a couple of extra meals in case, whatever. I'm pretty sure that we could automate that. He's like, yeah, but like, wouldn't it be just quicker the way I do it? Like I've got it all dialed in. I just like write it down on paper and like I'm done. I spend an hour on it. I'm like, right. It's in the you do this not just once, you do this every day, and that's where the magic is. It's yes, if like for one off, sometimes it's better to do it quickly manually, but this is something that you do day in, day out. So you gotta think about a longer picture, like you're gonna spend an hour, I would think even more, right? A day, that's 10 hours a week, that's like however many hours a year, and that's like and then you getting bogged down in the nitty gritty where you, as a business owner, you have to protect your time to be more in a strategic mindset, not always buried down in the woods, right? So it was just interesting to me that he couldn't get the grasp of the opportunity right away until like I had to, like I had to explain it.
Absolutely. And again, illustrating the importance of, being the advisor, being the strategic advisor, because look, what's his passion? His passion is cooking.
Yeah.
That's all that's what keeps him up at night is his 50 recipes, right? And so that's where you're his best friend is pointing these things out and providing him the solution so that he can cook because that's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to cook. I know some people think about, well, Why doesn't a business just do that themselves? Well, I think you just gave us the why, because that's not what they love. He has a passion for cooking. That's what he wants to do. He can't even see this. Obviously, it affects him every single day. Obviously, you can improve that, but he wastes no time thinking about that because that's not his passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's where you're so valuable, and that's why, again, what we as agencies do is so valuable. We just want to put butts in chairs for that guy so that he could serve his meals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very passionate about like figuring out, like I mean, there's a thing being said that, stick to your niche, but like I'm kind of passionate about like diving into other niches because I'm creative. We are all creative as entrepreneurs. And like I love the creative process of like, the think through process of, like helping in your business that I've got zero clue about, but through discovery, through questioning, through, like gaining some insights to then like take that and then start to like, apply my knowledge of what can be done. It's amazing. Like we've got truly incredible opportunity what we can do with high level to all these small businesses. Which brings me to the next question. You've been helping, many agencies, grow and increase
Yeah.
their revenue. What do you see like being the biggest challenge that agencies face like today when trying to like and trying to do all this?
Well, agencies are struggling with two big things that directly affect their MRR, their monthly recurring revenue,
Hmm.
right? The two big things. And the two big things that they struggle with are landing the clients and keeping the clients, right? So those are the two biggest things that I like to focus on with helping agencies. How to make it easier for them to land the clients, but then once they get the clients, how to get them to keep it. And of those two things, keeping the clients is actually the most important one. It actually has the most impact on their MRR, is minimizing their churn, keeping their churn down.
I would even go
If
beyond that and say that actually it even has a further impact on acquisition of new clients too, because if you can keep somebody longer, that means they're much more likely to become an evangelist, which is much more likely for you to generate an amazing case study, which you can then remarket and draw in new customers, right?
So you make an excellent point. And so what I'm referring to when I say the more powerful one is that there is formula out there, and it's called the revenue ceiling. And actually, I've done some training on this, and I've created a tool called the revenue ceiling calculator about this, and it calculates the maximum potential that that you can hit as an agency. There is a ceiling that you cannot break through, and it really takes into account a couple factors. One is your 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 average ticket per customer, all right? And the other is your churn rate, all right? You take those two things, and the calculation is simply if you take your average ticket per customer and divide that by your churn rate, that's gonna basically give you the churn or the maximum volume per customer, all right? That can't go up unless you either increase the average or reduce the churn.
Hmm.
All right, now because the churn is a denominator, that's got more of an impact. It will increase your ceiling faster by reducing your churn because in the formula, it's the denominator, it's the bottom of the fraction. And so that gives it more leverage. But you introduce something outside of the equation, which is a very good point, which is referrals. It's, introducing friends and stuff like that. And that's not actually based into this equation. So that's actually a very, very good point.
Yeah, yeah. There's a thing I like to relate to this as saying a leaky bucket. Like don't have a leaky bucket. I used to, I'm coming from a fitness background, so whenever I worked in the gyms or working with a gym as a client now, you know, it's like one of my first things to go. It's like, hey, like, how many members you got? What's your turn? Like, how many are leaking through the bucket? Like how many, and because I mean, most small businesses, like gyms in particular, they're always like kind of obsessed, like lead gen. Like we want more trials, we want more trial members, leads. But then, like you dive into these numbers, and you're like, mate, like your problem is not leads. Your problem is you can't keep members. So let's unpack that experience of a member. What happens when they walk in the first time? Who do they speak to? What happens? Like, do you drop them straight into an intense workout, or you put them into some beginner? You give them like a bespoke first time experience that makes them amazed. When they walk out, do they speak to somebody on the way out? Do somebody calls them the next day to check on them, like if they're, if they're sore, gives them tips on stretch and whatnot? And it's like, do you do this to increase conversion? But also, once they convert, what do you do to keep them happy, to keep them coming back? Because I mean, exercising on its own, like I've been, I don't know how I managed to do it, but lately I've been able to go to gym myself. Which a few years back I'd be like, I can't just train by myself; it's just freaking boring. But now I just it's a bit more of a mundane thing. I just switch over and I just work out, and somehow I'm pushed myself into it and it works. But I know for most it's not like that. Exercise is not that fun to do on a regular basis. So if you're a member of a gym, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. You got to introduce the community aspect. You got to look after everybody and just be really proactive. That's how you keep them, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned the leaky bucket, and I love that because my first book about 14 years ago was called The Back End Blueprint. And even today, Flawless Follow-Up, which is my agency and my proprietary methods that I teach businesses,
Hmm.
and I teach agencies how to deploy this for businesses and for their clients. The acronym that I use is LEAK. I use it LEAC, but it's based on that concept of a leaky bucket, a leaky funnel. And to your point, the L is for lead generation. And most businesses stop at lead generation. And then to your point, the E is engagement. Well, you're talking about the same thing. How do you engage people the following day? How do you get them to take action? That's what the AA is. And then convert them from a prospect into a customer, and from a customer into a repeat customer and a champion of the business that will go out and refer their family and friends. So you've got that. You've covered it all on this conversation so far. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, it seems like every time we talk, there's some synergies. When we talked about, when was it? 6 months back, I talked about my profit roadmap system, and then you just happened to say that you've got something similar. It's
That's
interesting.
right.
We're like-minded. Steve, can you break it down for us a little bit for some of the new agencies that need help? You mentioned a couple of the acronyms, some of the like systems or frameworks that you use. Can you pick one that in particular you like to pick and just unpack it a little bit? Like, why is it special?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. The most important thing when I'm bringing on a client, I've got my own SaaS. I'm a SaaSpreneur. So if I'm bringing on a client, and so what I have learned over the years, and what I want to instill in all the agencies that I work with or that are watching whatnot, the importance of getting them a quick win. The importance of getting them a quick win.
Mhm.
All right. We've got as an agency and as a SaaS provider, we've got 2 months, maybe 3 months tops, that if they're not seeing the results, they're going to leave you, okay? On the other hand, the inverse is true. If they're seeing those results, they'll never leave you. I've got clients for more than 13 years that are plugged in the same system. I built them 13 years ago. And you started our conversation today saying, "Hey, great. My system just delivered me a $4,500 sale." Well, the same thing's going on for my clients with systems that I built them 13 years ago, that they come to work during in the morning. It's like, hey, great. I already have sales because these systems work. And are they ever going to quit that system? No, they're never going to quit that system. So you got to get some quick wins. And my favorite quick win is what I call the win back. And the community might know it as a DVR, database reactivation program. Win back is something that I've done for years. Actually, what the first thing I did 14 years ago, I now call that sales CPR. And that's a more elaborate
I like that.
form of a win back. Oh, sales CPR. Oh yeah. I've been doing sales CPR for 14 years. But it is a reactivation program. It's, hey, the easiest, fastest, and cheapest customer for you to get is one that you already have. Just get them to come back and buy from you again. It's easier, it's faster, it's cheaper. They buy more, they spend more, and to your point, they refer their family and friends. Why not start there? We can get success there very, very quickly. And that's why I always start there. That's the quick win. And that opens up the doors right away. Whenever they see those wins, they're excited. Them being the clients, the businesses. Man, that's great. And the next question is always, what else can you do? What can we do next? And that opens up the doors. So that's why start with the success quickly. Let them see the money in the bank quickly. Then you're going to have a client for life. You're not going to be worried about churning them in 2 to 3 months. And then you can go on with all the things we can do. You and I and all these agencies listening to us, we can do a million things for them, but we can't do it all at once. So start with getting them that quick win so there's never a doubt about, now, why am I paying you again?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the worst question you ever want to have to answer, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me tell you, I've done my first DBR for a gym, it was about 2.5 years ago. They didn't have that many contacts. They had like 400 contacts, and I just ran through it. It was a simple, "Hey, would you like to come back for a week of training?" And we got about 30 bites, 30 responses, 30 positive responses. Now, there's a few learnings of that I didn't train them enough to realize, to tell them like, "Hey, Mr. Klein, like you got to follow up on those. Like that's the opportunity." So it was a bit of a missed, but just the fact that we were able to resuscitate, I like the CPR, like resuscitate. We're able to resuscitate 30 new opportunities back then, and then fast forward to now, where you actually um, can plug an AI bot to that and make it even better. So no longer you have to say, "Hey, Mr. Client, just make sure that you respond to all these positive responses," because that's your like low hanging fruit. You could actually say, "Well, we'll even handle that. We'll plug an AI. We'll train the AI, and the AI will book them in for, you just let us know when you wanna, which classes are good to book them in for." It's freaking awesome.
100%.
So
Yeah, and your numbers are spot on with a fitness client that I had. I've got a video out there on Flawless Follow Up website of a fitness client, almost exactly the same situation you said. He only had a few leads. He had about 700.
mhm.
We got our first response in 49 seconds after sending out the first text. His name was Alex, and I had this on a Zoom call. I've got the recording on the Zoom call on my website. Alex, I'm going to send out the first message now. Let me know when you get the first response. 49 seconds.
Wow. That's awesome. Do you have like a recommended breakdown, like like to spread it over like a particular number, like say 100 phone numbers a day, or depend? I mean, do you have like a ratio? Let's say if the business has 5 employees, we could probably safely do 200, or
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a great question, and especially look, the one thing that I'm seeing now, and, I've been telling you, I've been doing these reactivations for, 14 years,
hmm
and only since I started with HighLevel a couple of years ago did I start using text messaging. I always did it email only. By the way, email works just as well, but text messaging might work a little quicker. But we do have issues today. I'm in the US, and in the US, we have to deal with A2P 10DLC. In other parts of the world, I'm sure they have to deal with other things. And so that's introduced a few complications with warming up phone numbers
hmm
and new messages. But even if it is warmed up, there is an overload factor that I found the same thing. I found that clients, they don't stay on top of the conversation manager. They don't always see the positive response.
yeah,
Somebody says, "I do want to come into the gym. Yeah, I want that free pass." And they don't see it and they don't respond to it. And so I found that what's working for me is to send out about 250 text messages a week. That lets me do 1,000 per month, and then I break that down into sending 4 days per week. So basically, I'm sending, what is that, 50,
s-
60
yeah,
messages a day.
yeah,
Okay, all right, and that's plenty.
right. Because
From
it's
the 50,
what is it, about
60,
2% conversion roughly on these, so you get a
well, we're seeing upwards of 20%
nice.
of a re-engagement. Okay. Now that's not conversion. That's not conversion, but it's a re-engagement. And the re-engagement's important because that's what the client has to look at. The re-engagement says somebody's going to ask a question. They're going to say, "Yes, I'm interested." They're going to say, "No, I'm not interested." They're going to say, "Take me off your list." But a lot of them say something like, "Well, yeah, does Joe still work there? Is Joe still a trainer there? Or, hey, I want to come in Wednesday afternoon. Do you have something?" So, a lot of those are questions that need to be answered. So the re-engagement's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And, if we're re-engaging 20, 25%, let's say we're sending out 50 messages a day, 20% that's 10 conversations. That's good. That's great. But it's also enough without overwhelming them. If we double that, then all of a sudden you got 20 conversations and it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's you're right on point with that. 100%. In your experience, Steve, what roles like? Sorry.
It's all right.
In your experience, what role does client retention play in an agency's long term success? And what do you like see like how should they balance their efforts between acquiring new clients and retaining existing ones?
Well, I stated earlier that to me, client retention is the lever. Dan Kennedy says big hinges or little hinges swing big doors, right? Leverage and retention is leverage because a small improvement of your retention, remember it's in the bottom, it's in the denominator of that equation,
Hmm.
has it has leverage. It has a bigger effect on your ability to grow your business, to grow your MRR. All right. So that being said, a small improvement of your retention. If you could improve your retention from 5% to 4%, it's going to have a big effect on, the 1% improvement of retention is going to have a much larger effect on your MRR than just, improving by 1%. So that's why it's so, so, so important. And I focus there. But, what can you do for that? It's one of the things I talked about is show them a quick win. You show them a quick win, they automatically want to stay longer. They want you to do more, which now means you could start sell them more. You could offer them more services. Hey, what else can you do? Well, here's what else I can do. Well, if you provide them additional service, you just increased the top line of the equation too. You just increased the monthly value of that customer. So if you show them a quick win, you improve the retention, it likely leads to more business. And if they're satisfied, likely gets you a referral, especially if you ask for one. So those are all the things. But, I like to start there. This is where we had the discussion 6 months ago. You've got your profit roadmap. I've got something called the profit wrap, which is an acronym. I love acronyms. So WRAP. We start with a win back, and the win back is that W. Well, the R that comes next for me is reviews and reputation. Because if we won somebody back and they came into the business, well, now let's ask them for a review.
Yeah.
So that's now the R of the wrap. All right. Now, when we start doing a couple of these things, we do them manually. And then once we do them manually and we figure out things, we figure out, hey, what's our messaging? What's our cadence? When do we do this? How do we do that? Once we have that all figured out, we no longer have to do it manually. We could automate it. That becomes the A of the profit wrap. And the P of the profit wrap, I got lots of P's, but profit itself is a P. Getting more people into the system is a P. There's lots of things that we could add to the P. So it could be P, 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 P. It could be the profit wrap. But anyways, we'll leave it at that.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Steve, couple of rapid fire questions, high level wise. Obviously, you've been in the industry for almost 4 decades, but now are you all in on high level, or are you still using other pieces of software?
Wow. Super, super question. You go back and listen to things that I've said forever. And I've always said that I'm profit process or I'm software agnostic. I'm platform agnostic. I don't care. I'm a process guy. Okay. My profit wrap can work on any system. It doesn't have to be high level. All right. So for the majority of the time that I've been out there doing this, taking on clients, showing them success, they could use anything. I've done this for Infusionsoft. I've done this for Entreport. I've done this for, so many different systems, even many you haven't even heard of. Okay. Because every industry has their own CRM.
Yeah.
So I've never cared about the platform. But, and here comes the big but. Yes, I'm all in on high level. Now, here's the reason why. All right. There's many reasons why. But my big idea, my big passion, I've got a stated mission, a vision that I had a long, 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 long time ago was to bring an extra $1 million of revenue to 10,000 businesses. All right. And that's what the reason why is because I've got a system, I've got a process, I've got many of them and they've worked across different niches. We talked about, niching down or whatnot. Sales CPR, I've done this for people selling $10,000 pieces of jewelry and people selling $10 hamburgers, and everything in between, including an oil rig company that sells $100,000 replacement parts of oil rigs. Okay. So it works. I mean, resuscitation, reactivation, it works for all types of businesses. Okay. So the processes are across the board. But in order to reach 10,000 businesses, I'm back to that concept of leverage again. Leverage is a big deal to me.
Mhm.
Okay. In order to do that, in order to leverage, we have to be able to scale. In order to scale, we need to be able to duplicate. We need to be able to replicate. And I've tried to do this. I tried to do this for years, but it was too damn hard. I needed, to build a website, I needed a page builder. So maybe I built a website on WordPress. And if I wanted to replicate this, well, I had to clone a WordPress site. But then I needed to clone funnels in Active Campaign or whatever I was using. And I had to clone all these different things. And then I had to tie them all together. And then something would break and you can't maintain it. All right. HighLevel solves that, doesn't it? The concept of snapshots is absolutely brilliant. And that's why I'm all in on HighLevel. But if you want to take it to the next reason I'm all in for HighLevel is their business model is brilliant. To sit down to do something that serves the agencies, to give them their own platform, to roll this out and be that solution provider, they've just done an unbelievable job. So while I've always felt like the software doesn't matter, hats off to HighLevel. They've made a difference. They're different than all the others. And yes, I'm all in.
Yeah. I always wonder, it must take a unique human being to decide to go with like this type of model because they could have easily they could have said, "Hey, we're gonna license this, and then you're gonna pay per sub account like a small portion as well." They went they went like unlimited, 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 unlimited media storage per sub. Like the number, I'm not really that good with math, but this is pretty straightforward to like if I'm running a business, I want to know what is my like costs. And like if I just say, hey, yeah, just go for your life, I'm not gonna copy you. I always wonder how can they I mean, I love it.
Well, they've been brilliant on so many levels. And I don't know how much of this was intended when they started. Okay. You, you know, but look at where they are today and the things. Here's what makes it so brilliant. Okay. And hats off to them again. And I really do. And by the way, not just for the idea and the concept, but the execution and the commitment to the community is something that I'm not sure I've seen it in any other business. I'm talking about, Sean is, you and I know. I mean, Sean is the most approachable guy in the world. Look at the business he's made, and look how approachable he is to every single agency. And Alex and Robin and Varun, Robin, I said Alex and Robin, Robin, Varun, all of them, right? They're so approachable. They are so committed to the success of the agencies. They do more for the success of their users than anybody, any platform I've ever been. But to your point, you know, yeah, right, they could have done all that. But then here's the good part today is they've figured out so many different ways for them to monetize. They're making money on every text message, they're making money on every email sent. And good for them because it's still keeping the platform an incredible bargain for everybody, but it's allowing them to grow the business and I'm sure be very profitable and and do all those things. So the model is phenomenal. The execution is flawless. I like that word flawless. you know, they've really done a terrific job and they're special guys.
They really did. Do you have a particular feature that actually yeah. Do you have a particular feature that you like a lot? Out of all the different features the high level has, do you have like one that's like really stands out for you?
No, sorry. I'm not a feature guy. I'm a process guy. And here's why I say that like that is because it's one of the biggest dangers that I think agencies have is selling features
Mhm.
where they should be selling processes and results. I'm a process and results guy. I've been saying for years technology changes nothing, but it improves everything. All right. I'll tell you a story. I won't go into the details of the story, but Richard Sears, who started the Sears catalog in the late 1800s. If you look at the story of how he did that in the late 1800s, you could draw parallels to the way we go to market today in terms of leveraging technology to get to the masses, and so forth. For him, the new technology that got him to remote masses faster was a steam locomotive. Not very fast, but in those days, it was the fastest. That's what allowed him to reach remote audiences in the rural areas when he was a city-based guy. All right. So, but the thing is this: people are people are people. The reason people buy today are the exact same reasons people bought 200 years ago or 150 years ago when the Sears catalog was started. So it's a process. And marketing and sales are processes and systems that businesses don't have those systems in place. The whole thing about features is the technology part that helps you execute those processes better, faster, cheaper. But I really want to caution agencies that one of the biggest mistakes they can make is focus on features. The other reason you shouldn't focus on features is because it commoditizes you.
100%.
Last I heard, I think there's 60,000 high level agencies or users out there. Well, if you're all selling features, what makes me different than you that's different from everybody else? And the only way you can compete is on price, and that's a race to the bottom, and you're never going to win. So, sorry, no feature.
Well, what I meant by that question wasn't really what feature you like most to market. It was more about what feature you like most in your own back end, in the implementation side of things.
Okay, I'm going to retract my answer. I'm going to give you an answer. Snapshots,
Snapshots.
snapshots. Because that allows us to replicate and scale. There you go. Yes, that is it. That's it. It's snapshots.
There you go. And like you say, you're not like fan of picking up a particular feature. Snapshot can encompass all the different things: workflows, custom values, team,
Absolutely.
the whole fans, the whole nitty
Yep.
gritty. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yep.
I mean, it's probably not surprising to why you went with high level a few years back. But was there a particular? Do you remember that moment when you like found out about it and like can you take us back to that moment?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Maybe. I may have heard about it a couple times and didn't really look into it. But the first time I saw it and really the light bulb went off, okay, I was watching a YouTube video with Bayant Singh demonstrating the new snapshot, the new ultimate business snapshot that he rolled out.
Hmm.
So this was November of 2022. I bought his snapshot that day. It was $5,000 and I signed up for an agency account that day and I was in business.
That quick.
It's Bayant's fault.
I did interview him a couple of weeks back. Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Steve, training and coaching. Let's talk about that. That's also been a very significant part of your work. Are there any like most critical skills or knowledge areas that you believe agencies need to master today when it comes to coaching and training?
Well, I'm a big fan of follow-up. My company's called Flawless Follow-Up. I believe that it's a huge opportunity for businesses. I know I hear from agencies all the time, and if they lose a client, all right? And so many times they'll say, this guy fired me and he said my leads suck. So the business was not happy with the leads he got from the agency. And I said, is it true? Do your leads suck? He go, no, these are good leads, but they don't have a process in place for what to do with those leads when they get them.
Mm,
Exactly. They don't know how to follow up with a lead when they get them. The stats are out there. 97% of leads are not going to convert right away. 3% tops.
yeah.
Lots of things will tell you that. Well, if you're gonna fail 97% of the time, the first time, doesn't it make sense that you try and try and try and try again?
Yeah.
And doesn't it make sense that you automate that process so you can be consistent and you don't burn yourself out and you don't have to suffer that rejection every time? So, that's where the agencies have the most, and most agencies are not doing a good enough job with this. Most agencies are setting themselves up for failure because they're selling leads. They're selling lead generation when they should be selling lead management and conversion.
Yeah.
And that's what we bring to the table, is the ability to manage and convert those leads. And not enough agencies are doing that. So that's where I think the biggest opportunity is.
I like this. I'm a big fan of reverse engineering anything that you try and do, which can seem like counterintuitive to what most other agencies do. Like they focus on lead generation. I'm a big fan of doing the back end. It's like put things in place to like on the full, like all the way to the back end. It's like you know, there's going to be a really solid fulfillment before you can get a customer in. I spoke to somebody, mate of mine who's got another agency, and he's like, "Yeah, mate, just embrace the chaos." And I'm like, "Nah, I cannot embrace chaos." I'm like, if I'm going to sign up somebody, I want them to be, having a good experience, and I want that to be scalable for me as well, so that it's not just great experience for them, but also it's a fun experience for me to fulfill, knowing that I can fulfill, and it doesn't take a lot of my time. So I'm a fan of like creating the back end, the fulfillment aspect, trying like templates and whatnot, then create all the follow up sequences, and then go into the marketing and sales aspect, which is yeah, it's an interesting one because I speak to some some agencies, or not just speak to, but I see people in the community, and they go on the front, and then they figure out the back end as they go, and they're probably closing more on front end. I mean, it would be interesting to find out what's their churn rate,
They're
but
probably not.
yeah,
They're probably losing those leads and failing. And you and I are singing the same tune. My book was called The Back End Blueprint. So you and I believe this, and the first line says, you're flushing your lead generation money down the toilet if you don't have your back end in place. So you and I are on the exact same tune on that.
yeah. I keep asking a couple of different questions. I was wondering, like, if I can get you to talk about like a different thing, something really cool, but you keep going back to follow up, follow up. You're really keeping it simple, but there's really something to it. It's trying not to, like, you really stick to your guns. The other thing I was gonna say with the flawless follow up, or follow up as a principle anyway, is that it's probably the most what you have in control any business, right? Because think about it, like if you're trying to create the marketing aspect, which means a lot of content creation, a lot of different lead generation campaigns, optimizing those things, all of that, those take time. The follow up, to create a follow up sequence, is not relying on any algorithm. It's not relying on any real expenditure aside from maybe a copywriter, which even that is down to cents these days with AI. So really, it's the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to the biggest impact fast.
It is. You also mentioned another key element, and that's control. You have no control over SEO.
Yeah.
You have no control. Now, you might have some things that work, but we all know that those algorithms change all the time. All right. And we all know that competition there changes all the time. And you have no control over social media. You and I and everybody listening here has seen, you know, successful people get shut down by social media for one reason or another. Gone, wiped out. You literally have control of email marketing. You literally own your list. And if you back up your list and you protect yourself and you're smart, you can go anywhere you want. We could get wiped out tomorrow. Well, specifically, one of my clients literally sent me a testimonial thanking me for saving his business when COVID hit. He's a cigar manufacturer, he's a cigar store. And of course, when the pandemic hit, he had to close a store. Every cigar store in the country had to close their store. They were out of business. But I'd worked with him for 10 years and built for him a massive list of cigar smokers. He simply sent out emails, said, well, you can't come in and buy cigars, but I could ship them to you. April of 2020 and May of 2020, when we were right in the middle of the pandemic and most cigar stores were out of business, he had his biggest and most profitable months ever and
Right.
thanked me for saving his business. He took control by owning his list. That's always been the number one thing I did for businesses was having them build their list. Today, many people are sitting on their list, people being businesses. Many businesses have massive lists that they don't even know about. And so that's one of the first things we do is help them assemble that list, do what we call a data dig, and get all the data out and put it into one place and get it marketable. It's one of the first things we do for our businesses, our clients.
Can we unpack that a little bit? Like, in particular, the email strategy, database reactivation or list revalidation through email.
Hmm.
Are you open to share the process a little bit? Like,
Of course. Yeah. Email, text message, in these days, we want to be careful. We want to make sure that we've got permissions. And there's questions out there about, do I have permission to do this? Do I have permission to do that? So one of the first things that I advise my clients is, let's make sure we have permission. All right. Now, do not ever buy a list, scrape a list. Okay. Don't ever do that. All right. But if you have a list of something of people that are customers, prospects, have asked you questions, have shown interest in some form or fashion, I think it's completely fair to reach out to them and say, hey, we're updating our systems and we want to verify that this is you, that this is their best information, and that you'd still like to hear from us. Please click this link and update that, so that we can protect your privacy. All right. So that's what I would do. That's the first thing I would do if you're going to a cold list.
mhm.
All right. Don't reach out to them with a marketing message. Reach out with them and say, look, we're updating our systems. We want to make sure it's accurate. We want to respect your desires. Are you still interested in cigars? And if so, would you still like to hear from us? And if they say no, they say no. We're only looking for the yeses. There's no sense in us marketing to the no's.
Would you have like maybe like two trigger links, like one yes, one no, so make it even more
Sure.
automated. So
Yeah.
the moment
Sure.
the
That's a
moment
great
they
idea. I
hit
love that.
no, it's like unsubscribe, remove, delete.
Love it. Yeah. Love that. Love that idea. Absolutely.
There's a thing where some might be like, yeah, but will I not like suddenly lose half of my list, right?
So what?
So what, right?
If they weren't gonna buy, so what? You could lose 90% of your if 90% of your list sucks, so what?
Yeah. I remember Kristen Rushman, she talked about it's like, well, why would you want to have them on the list anyway if they don't want it? Wouldn't it be better to have
Right?
a high quality list of people that want to be on the list, which in fact is gonna make a huge impact in your open rates? Because if suddenly you've cleaned up your list and there's people who only want to get your stuff, now your open rate's gonna go up, your reply rate's gonna go up, and then your that's gonna positively improve your domain authority, your domain reputation. So so I mean, I don't know how that works if you have a bad reputation, or whether that could help turn it around. Maybe it could. That's more of a technical question because we don't really know the back end of Google and all the big inboxes. But
Let me tell you the most important thing, and I'll prove it to you. Okay, is you're gonna have more money in the bank. All right, so, here's a sales CPR I've done in the past, and a guy had a list of people on constant contact, and he sent them a newsletter once a month.
mhm.
I said, "How much money are you making when you send out a newsletter?" "Oh, I don't make any money. I'm just telling them what's going on in my business." I'm looking at the open rates. He didn't even have any trackable links in there. He's not doing any email marketing at all. He's just throwing stuff out there.
Just
Okay.
value.
So, right. Well, it's not even value. I question whether it's even value. People weren't even reading it. He might think it's value, but it's not what people wanted.
Right.
So when I told him about Sales CPR, hey, Sales CPR is a 3-day email reactivation campaign. And we're going to send them 6 emails over 3 days. Oh, that's a lot. People are going to unsubscribe. I said, you're 100% right. People are going to unsubscribe. I promise you that. I promise you people are going to unsubscribe. Then why would I do it? I said, because you're going to make money. I talked him into it. I actually talked him into doing it for a portion of his list. Didn't want to do it for the whole list.
Yeah.
And of course, it was the bad portion of his list that he gave it to me, right? That's what I would have done too if I were him. All right. Anyways, we do the sales CPR. We send out 6 messages in 3 days. He had like 45 unsubscribes out of about 8,000 people. Okay. I said,
45%.
"You're right." Yeah.
Yeah.
What well, that's is that what it is? Yeah. Okay, I'll go with your math on that. But anyways, the bottom line is this, we could do he had 45 opt-outs. He made $22,089. I know this because I did a case study in this many, many times. And I asked him, I said, "Well, let me ask you this. Would you rather have those 45 people still on your list, those 45 people that basically told you, 'I'm not interested in you,' or would you rather have the $22,089 in the bank?" He said, "Well, of course I want the $22,089." I said, "Well, that was there the whole time. That was there the whole time. You just didn't know how to market to them. These are the same people you send a newsletter to. It's only actually half of the people you send a newsletter to every single month where you make nothing." And yeah, I pissed off 45 people that said, "Don't ever dare send me an email again." But I also made you $22,089. How do you feel about that? Well, pretty good.
I love it.
Well, by the way, we also got him nearly 100 referrals. All right. One of the secrets is I tied the reactivation campaign. I am literally telling you one of my secrets here. I tied the reactivation campaign into a viral sweepstakes using a program called UpViral. All right. Where I made them to get the discount, I made them share the sale on Facebook. That's how you claimed your coupon. That's how you claimed your discount. That brought in nearly 100 new leads. And he pays nearly $100 per lead, which means it brought him in $10,000 worth of new leads from a reactivation program. So there's so much value in doing these things that people don't know how to use those lists. But yeah, we got opt-outs, absolutely, no doubt.
I love it. That's awesome. I had a follow-up question and then I forgot what it was. It is impressive. Jesus. Just lost my train of thought.
That's all right, it'll come back.
I've got three interviews this week. One I did yesterday with the ADA comply guy. I don't know if you know Tony Caggiano. We talked about
Okay.
we talked about really interesting topic. Website accessibility for people with disabilities. Not often spoken about. And he said to me how businesses can claim up to $5,000 back in their expenses simply by improving their website. And then agencies can use it as a marketing angle to say, hey,
Cool.
yeah, now I'm interviewing you, and on Thursday I'm going to interview Jenna Larson from the Group Track CRM. So that's going to be interesting. Hey, Steve, we have a segment called Move the Needle where we discuss like impactful strategies that drive business growth. I know we already talked about a whole bunch of them today, specifically, database reactivation, Sales CPR. So we pretty much covered that. But if there is one extra impactful strategy that really drives business growth aside from those that you mentioned today, would you like to share?
Well, yeah, I mean, I normally always start with the reactivation.
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, if not 99 out of 100, that's where I'm going to start. But we've covered it very well on this podcast. So I'll tell you, the other thing is, and you mentioned this, okay, having a back end system in place first whenever you meet somebody. And I teach a system of my MVP, minimum viable process, is simply an 8 email strategy. The first 5 emails are what I call the relationship igniter. I've called it the ignition funnel in the past, and it's a welcome sequence, but it's done in a very specific way. But it's 5 messages over basically the first 2 weeks. Anytime you meet somebody, if you're networking, if you're driving somebody to a landing page from an advertisement, whatever, how do you follow up with them for the first 5 messages? Now, I've got a very specific way to do it, but the bottom line is this: get it out there. Get your first 5 messages out there in a sequence, so whenever you meet somebody, whenever you drive them to a landing page, I don't have my smartwatch with me right now, but I've got my a QR code on my smartwatch. Somebody asks for my business card. I say, here, just scan my watch. And they scan a QR code on my watch face. All
Nice.
right. And that takes them that gets them into the funnel. And then I've got at least 5 messages already queued up from that, what I call my relationship igniter. All right. Now, after that, we go into what I call follow up forever. And that's just a series of 3 simple poke messages. Every 45 to 60 days, "Hey, Vit, just touching base. What's up? What are you working on? What can I help you with?" All right? Or you could link back to something on your post, on your blog post on your website. "Hey, Vit, I wrote this article. Thought you might like it." Whatever you wanna do. Just 45 to 60 days. "Hey, Vit, what's going on?" Just touching base. And loop that, all right? Write 3 to 5 of those forever follow-up messages and then loop them it's infinite. So think about this. That's your 8 email system. 5 ignition system emails, 3 follow up forever. You go through, you meet at anybody, you take them through those 5 messages in a sequence over 2 weeks. All right. And then you go from there into an infinite wheel of your follow up messages. That is an infinite system. They could opt out at any time if you're annoying them. Fine. Okay. Now, obviously, as any good marketer, any good email writer would do, have a call to action on every single one of those emails. And if you do that, you're gonna outlast and outperform 99% of your competition.
I love that.
And I have had businesses hire me and send me those beautiful, 45 years, $4,500 vet. I've had those beautiful messages roll off of those forever follow-up campaigns. I tell a story about Mark, and he hired me 15 months after I met him by replying to one of my forever follow-up and saying, "Your system's the best. You sold me, so I know you could sell more of my stuff."
Yeah.
8 emails is all that it takes. But that's an MVP. It's not gonna be the best system, but it's a minimum viable process.
Exactly. That was my follow-up question because I'm a big fan of like doing a thing I call like a first 14 day, which is just another, basically a short initial, more intense follow-up sequence, and then roll it into like a 12 to 24 months campaign. But that one
Beautiful.
very curated, very content driven in, buyer journey in mind, so that it covers, both, people who are in the awareness, who are in consideration, or who are in decision stage, and then breaking down the content to those stages. So, like, if somebody's in decision stage, things like pricing pages, case studies will be related like related like an effective content for those people to decide to buy, as opposed to somebody's in the awareness stage. It'd be more educational, value driven stuff. And what I realize is like if I go 3 to 2 to 1 ratio, so you go like every fortnight, you send one email, and so like Fortnite 1 might be educational, like blog article. Fortnite 2 might be a link to a video on the back of an email. So each one of these emails you write down as a sell copy, not to sell the underlying product you want to sell, but sell them on the click to the thing to consume the full content, to the full video, to the full article and whatnot. And then you just track all the trigger links based on what they click, but then assign a point value. So if it's content that's like awareness related, you give it 1 point. If it's consideration related, you give it 2 points, and if it's decision related, you give it 3 points. And then that way you can then create another workflow that actually maps out like which type of content people click more, and then you create a threshold. So when it hits 100 points, like it's like a predictor. It's like this person is now consuming more of a considerations or slash decision related content recently. They just hit this mark, flag it to a sales rep. But I'm getting to a question. Do you have a favorite?
Alri but I just need to tell you that that was absolutely beautiful what you just so, that's an all-star process that you just laid out. Congrats on that. I love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only problem with this process is that it 100% requires to have all the content created. You need to have videos, you need to have articles, you need to have all the content in order to create those emails. You could you
Correct.
could you could gradually roll it out. So it's like one of the things. Like as soon as I get a new business, new client, the first thing I go on about is like, hey, we gotta do a monthly rhythm every month, one video a week, one article a month. And if you do that, then at the end of the month, you're gonna have all the content you need in order to speed up this whole campaign. And you just create it once, and then you keep going. And then what you do is, say if it's 12 months, you do halfway through, or 4 months in, 8 months in, 12 months in, you you pre-schedule into the cycle one of those DBRs, the SMS. So now you hitting them with the email and the DBR, and then you're done. My
That's
question
phenomenal.
was, you like it? I thought you would. My question is, do you have a favorite copywriting method?
Oh, wow. You know, wow, you that's a great, 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 great question. And I love copywriting. I've got a book, I've got a box of books right here, a box of very expensive copywriting books right here, right next to me. And I love it. And I've studied lots and lots and lots of the greats. I don't rely on specific formulas. Whatever I'm working on, I'll think of specific copywriters that I think would get this point across the best. And I'll tell you that that's one of my ChatGPT secrets now. And I do use ChatGPT now. Okay. Which I've got a love hate relationship with ChatGPT because sometimes it's taken me longer to do stuff and I
Yeah.
find myself relying on it too much.
The UI is
All
not
right.
great. It's hard to find stuff that you've done before. There's no saving of prompts
No
and stuff.
doubt. No doubt. But I also find myself trying to be too perfect sometimes and not just accepting what's good enough. Good enough is good enough. And I got to remind myself that sometimes. But that being said, what I love to do is I will love to ask it a question. I love bullet points. Okay. So I will if I'm writing a sales letter and I want bullet points, I will literally tell it, you know, hey, I want a Gary Halbert style bullet point, or I want a Ben Settle
Mhm.
style bullet point and give me 20 of them, all right? And then when it gives me the answer, I'll usually refine it a little bit. I say, "Okay, well, you said this, but I'm looking more for this or whatnot." So, no to a formula that I can think of, but some of my favorites are Gary Halbert, Ben Settle, Dan Kennedy. You know, they're the names you would know, Frank Kern, Russell Brunson. I mean, I'm referring to those people and their styles a lot in my development.
Yeah.
But I happen to be a pretty good writer of my own, so I don't use it as a crutch.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge if for any marketer, I think this should be like number one lesson, like to learn at least like two or three really good frameworks. I like the problem agitate solution framework. It's really simple but effective.
Oh, I missed, Eugene Schwartz, one of my favorites also, breakthrough advertising. So, yep, yes, agitate, so problem, agitate, solution is good, absolutely. Ray Edwards has expanded on that to pastor, and I forget what the T and the O and the R stand for, but yes, those, absolutely is good.
There's one really good. This is a principle that I apply with my first 14 days nurture. I learned this from a business coach here in Australia, Taki Moore, and he probably learned it from
Sure.
somebody. It's basically he has this the first email, it's spear email, short personal expecting a return. Sorry, no, my bad. The first email is he had an analogy of it, but it was basically analogy of a furniture store, some furniture store brand, like a franchise anyway. And it's like you walk if you want to buy a sofa, you walk into a store. In the ideal experience would be you walk in, they greet you, and then they say, "Hey, my name is Jimmy. I'm the sales rep here. Welcome to our store. I see that you probably shop around for something. I'm going to leave you to it, but let me make the easy experience for you." On the right hand side, we got these type of sofas. They're kind of a little more on the budget side. And on the left hand side, we got more expensive sofas. At the far back, we got some custom sofas. And then all the way at the back, we got another thing. If you're looking for this and that, you also find it in here. If you need to reach me at any time, I'm going to be walking around here. Please welcome to our store. Enjoy the experience. And then you let the people go and do their thing. And I love it. The way this guy Taki explained is like you need to apply it to your very first email when somebody comes in. If it's on the back of an opt-in for a lead magnet or anything, everybody gets this same email. It's like, "Hey, welcome. Really excited to have you on my list. I see that you were interested in blah. Here you go. Download it. I wanted to introduce myself. Little personal brand introduction by the business owner. You pre-written it, and then the rest of the copy is like, let me tell you about what we do, about company, and then some helpful links. Like if you're interested in this thing, here's a link for that. Here's a link for that. Here's a link for that. If you need any help anytime, feel free to reach out. Really, again, and just wrap up, closure. Thank you for being on. And then that's it. So what you've done there is you've introduced them. You've made it really easy for them to explore in their own peril, in their own time. and you made it easy and told them that you were easy to access, and you haven't pushed anything. Then you go in an email too, like 2 days later, the one of the spare emails, short, personal, expecting a return, just one sentence email to generate a response. It's like, hey, I'm free this week for a quick call. Did you want to talk about anything? And then you go into these three hot button emails, and they're all on the problem, agitate, solution framework. Now, this is where you need to really understand your market, right? Now, I'm talking to you, and you know all this stuff, but I'm also talking to you guys listening. So hopefully, you're taking some notes if this resonates. What I like about it is if you really know the market, then you write down. Well, if you really know the market, you want to figure out what are the three most common problems that they face in general. The most common, right? Three. And then what you do is you cover each one of those problems with the one of the hot button emails. A hot button email is to basically press on the pain point, to problem, to highlight the problem, to let them know that you understand that this is the most common thing. You understand this is, what they go through. You agitate on that problem. You press into the wound to make them, like really realize, like I really need to do something. And then at the end, solution is like, hey, I just made a quick video about how you can solve this, and then you point them into a video. Hot button email 1, 2 days, 3 days break, hot button email 2, hot button email 3, and then obviously call to action at across all these emails with a thing called the super signatures, like, "Hey, PS, here are 3 ways how we can help," like whatever. And then you wrap it up with a final spare email, which is another short one sentence. And I really love that. It's like so applicable to any business. There's a framework. It's templatized. All you got to do is just change the copy.
That's beautiful.
Really like it. I feel like this is a good time to end this episode. We've really dove into this a lot today. So, Steve, you mentioned one really important thing. You want to make big impact. And I'm curious, why 10,000 businesses? Why $1 million?
Well, I'll start with the second question first. $1 million, making a business $1 million is easily achievable. You've done it. I've done it. Every agency listening here, we've seen it done. We know that we all know we're capable of doing that for our clients. We've seen it done before. Okay, 10,000 was just a big number that came in my head. I can't tell you why, but it's a big number that came in my head, and it's a big number that would have an impact. 10,000 times a million is 10 billion. It's $10 billion worth of revenue that we could create for small businesses. That's meaningful. That's meaningful. It's something we could all be proud of to be a part of it. Now I know I can't do that myself, and so to do that, to reach 10,000 agency or 10,000 businesses, the way to do that is with the agencies, because the agencies have the clients, 50 clients, 100, 500 clients, whatever the agencies have. And I've got the processes to help them do it. So it's a win-win-win situation. By me helping the agencies get those clients and serve those clients, the end result, hopefully, is us creating $10 billion worth of revenue to save small businesses.
Not only those businesses, but imagine like the family of the business owners, the families of the
Of course.
employees.
Of
It's
course.
it's a massive impact, and the customers that are being served by those businesses, right? It's a
Yeah, exactly. How many of our favorite businesses have we lost recently? And we could have helped them. We could have saved them if they knew what we were doing.
There's so many underdogs, so many underdog businesses that need help. They don't have access to these technologies purely just by knowledge. They don't have knowledge of these things even exist. They think that this is only accessible to the big corporations, and it has really become a level like a level playing field recent in the last couple of years. Where way back it'd be
That that is the superpower of high level.
yeah,
High level is what made this accessible and replicatable because of snapshots.
yeah,
Bingo.
yeah.
Yeah, you've brought this whole conversation, wrapped it up into a neat bow. That's why what we have with high level is so special.
So, Steve, you mentioned this revenue ceiling calculator, and I know we've talked about it before. And I would really, really love for the guys to get their hands on it. Are you open to share?
Of course, I'd love for them to have it. I'll even make a little video to show them how to use it and how to get the biggest impact out of the results.
Awesome. So how can they find it? Where can they find it? And what can they expect once they get it?
Well, let's go to your domain and tell me what it is again.
Let's go with highlevelexperience.com forward slash, and I'm looking at the behind you, it's flawless follow up. Let's keep it one keyword flawless.
Flawless.
Highlevelexperience.com forward slash flawless. Highlevelexperience.com slash flawless.
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely. I'll prepare that for you.
Excellent. So, guys, we'll get that happening. Once you head over to that page, you'll be able to get access to Steve's landing page through this page. The reason I do it like this because I like to give my guests an opportunity to track success on these. So we're gonna add some UTM parameters. Come on, guys, like we're all marketers here, right? We don't know no kidding right here, right? So full disclosure, there's no affiliate deal between me and Steve on this one. I truly just want to help, drive traffic to him because he's an amazing human being, and this calculator can really help you guys. But I do have a shameless plug for me as well. So if you do drop on that landing page, you will not only get access to Steve's revenue ceiling calculator, but if you scroll further down a little bit on the page, you will find out a little bit about this little thing I call a deep links generator. So if this is the first rodeo, if you're a first time listener, you've not heard of it before. If you're coming along, you probably heard me pitching this a few times last couple of episodes. It's a simple spreadsheet, guys. It's a spreadsheet with about 80 rows that I created that gives you ability to generate direct links to different areas of high level. And specifically who it's going to help is your SaaS customers. SaaS customers that just sign up with you and you want to be more proactive with their success. You want to be able to send them an email once a week to say, hey, at the bare minimum, you should be looking at doing these 4 things with our software. You should be checking pipeline weekly. You should be checking conversation inbox weekly or daily, actually. You should be maybe scheduling something on socials and sending, review requests. 4 features, 4 areas, right? And if you send them an email like that, that sort of highlights these areas, what you then want to do is you want to make it super easy for them to go straight to those areas. And so that's what the deep link is. When people click on that link, let's say, hey, click here to schedule a social for this week now. They click and takes them straight into their account, straight into social scheduler, and they can do the thing instead of having to log in. I mean, they have to log in, but instead of having to go in the left hand side menu bar and go into marketing, then get into social scheduler and like find out the path they need to get to, if they're new, they wouldn't know. So I just kind of figured that really helps make their job easier. And now I'm gonna make your job easier because I've already done the hard yard. So it's a simple spreadsheet. All you gotta do is just put your own white little domain and everything else will be populated. And then obviously you just need to put those links and set it up. One thing with that is you need to create a custom field that is going to hold the sub account's ID in order for that link to include that because it needs to include the sub account ID in how that URL is structured. There's no real rocket science to it more than that. It's quite simple like that. But yeah, I mean, I had to go through everything and find it out. So if you guys love it, go ahead and you can opt in for it. And that way you'll get on my list and I will follow up with you and get on Steve's list and he'll follow up with you as well. And then, and if at any point you feel like it's too much, you get always welcome to unsubscribe and keep our list quality. Steve, is there anything you'd like to say on like a last piece of parting advice?
Well, first of all, Vin, I want to thank you for inviting me here and putting me in front of your audience and the audience especially. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Proud of y'all. You know, we got a big mission ahead of us. I count you in. I count you now that you're here and you listen. I know you want to be a part of this. I know that you want to help bring that $1 million to those 10,000 businesses. So we're partners in this now. So let's go out. Those businesses want us and they need us, and it's our job to serve them, and that's also what we love doing. So I welcome you to the team. I love y'all, and I'm here for your success.
Steve, thank you so much, mate. You've shared a lot of valuable insights, and I really appreciate that. And it's been an honor to have you on the show. So thank you once again, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the High Level Experience. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then please share it with your fellow agency mates and other high levelers that you think would also benefit from listening. For show notes, links, and extra tips to help you grow your agency or your SaaS with high level, please go to highlevelexperience.com. We do have a couple of opportunities how you can engage with the episode and help shape the future episodes. So if you would like to, there's one thing you can do, which is to submit your impact story, and we'll feature in the next episode. So it's a simple link that you'll find if you go to highlevelexperience.com. There's a simple button that says share your story. You'll go there and you just upload a voice, 60 seconds voice recording, just your name, your agency name, and who you've helped, the underlying client, what you've done for them, 60 seconds, nice little message to help inspire, maybe another agency that's starting out. It's all for the good, and we'll feature you, and you'll get a shout out for your agency. If you're interested to be our next guest as well, I'm always open to interview more people. I've got, it's important for me to have people in the backlog in order for the weekly rhythm to continue. It's really important. If you're interested to be next guest, then just head over to highlevelexpense.com. There's a button for it, and you can see if you qualify. And I would love to have you and interview your success. This is not just open to the big OGs in the community, but I do want to have regular agency owners like you who are also making some success, starting to have some success, because ultimately this is about the community, high level community, and helping inspire everybody, and that trickles down into the impact that we all deliver to the underlying small businesses, the underdogs that need our help, right, Steve?
You betcha.
So thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye bye. Thanks, everybody.